Now joining me, Glyn Ford. He is author of Talking to North Korea, Ending the Nuclear Standoff, and he was part of Labour Party's International Committee on this issue from the UK. Glyn, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right, so this is an extraordinarily difficult question. As long as we've been doing this show, and that's 17 years now, we have not been able to solve this one. I don't mean just US foreign policy. We love to be constructive on the Young Turks and offer solutions. This one has been intractable. So I liked Donald Trump going to do the talks with Kim Jong-un. I know that a lot of people in the mainstream media huffed and puffed about that, and Democrats did, but I thought that was a positive step forward. Unfortunately, I think he got pretty much nothing out of it, but I'm willing to be corrected on that. And so I want to just level set here on where we are with the North Koreans, and then talk about how to solve it in reality.
Okay, I mean, Donald Trump has done the right thing. If at first you don't succeed, try diplomacy, and that's what he's doing. Now, frankly, yes, nothing much happened after Singapore, but that works for both sides. I mean, there were a series of promises made, nothing's been delivered. Part of the problem is that both administrations, both in Pyongyang and Washington, the leaders are ahead of the rest of the game. And one of the reasons for the second summit is to kickstart this process again. The North Koreans have kept their promises. They said no more ICBM or even missile tests and no nuclear tests. That's happened. So they're where they are. They're waiting to get their side of the bargain, which is end of war declaration, normalization of relations, or at least liaison offices in exchange in Pyongyang and Washington. They did give up the 55 MIA sets of remains that they're asked to do. But yes, nothing's happened since Singapore. This is restarting the process.
So I'm going to ask a funny question here. To what degree can we trust American intelligence on this issue? Because from time to time there are reports that American intelligence sees that they're still working on some missile sites that they're not supposed to be working on.
Absolutely, but when did they say they were going to stop? They said they'd stop testing. They have. In Kim Jong-un's New Year's address last year, he said he would carry on mass production of nuclear weapons. The Americans haven't stopped, if you want, developing, THAAD. They haven't stopped anything else. So it's where the deal was. You get what's on the box with North Korea, nothing else. What was on the box is end of testing. That's what you've got. If you want to move to the next stage, you need to pay more.
So obviously, the main problem there was one of perception when Donald Trump declared the problem over.
Well, I mean, Donald Trump's got a certain way with words. But I mean, if you actually look at what was agreed, the North Koreans has kept to it. It's not enough. We need to move on. But that requires, well, it now requires a second summit. And hopefully this time round, the key issue will be a little bit about what we get immediately, but more importantly is what the process is going to be, because there was no process last time. So we probably need a set of working groups dealing with issues around denuclearization, economics, normalization of relations, and if you want further moves on MIAs.
Okay, so Glyn, you say that it's not a healthy way of looking at this thing, or accurate, to say, well, the North Koreans are crazy, Kim Jong-un is crazy, and we can't reason with them. Now, they're the only ones that give you pause. Generally, I totally agree with that line of thinking. When they do come out with their over-the-top propaganda about how they bowl 300s and have no anus and et cetera, you do wonder a little bit. But I get that they're trying to do mythology in their own way, and I'm sure that they're Homo sapiens and they act based on logic, or what they, in their context, view to be logic.
Well, I mean, so in their own terms, they're acting perfectly rationally. I mean, Kim Jong-un adopted in 2013 the Bungjin line, which was developing a nuclear deterrent and growing the economy. The problem is there's a paradox at the heart of that, because developing the nuclear deterrent meant the sanctions came on, which made it impossible to seriously develop the economy. He got to a point where he says he has the nuclear deterrent. We can talk about exactly where he is if you want, but more importantly, he's now stopped that development and wants to switch to the economy. Now that means he needs He's looking for security guarantees. He's looking for some economic assistance and the rest. I think he's prepared to deal. All the evidence is he's not his father or his grandfather. He's a man brought up in Switzerland who is prepared to deal to grow his economy.
So that leads to a set of other issues. One is, I am curious. Do you think they have nuclear capabilities?
Well, they said, yeah, they have they've tested nuclear weapons. They have nuclear weapons, which now seem to be working. Some of the early tests didn't work. They've got an ICBM, or ICBMs, capable of crashing onto the United States. What is not clear whether they have the capability to marry the two together and to get it to work. There's no evidence they've got re-entry technology, and they don't have any guidance system. I mean, I was told in Washington that they've probably got a 50% chance of hitting within sort of 50 miles of what they fire at. So if things start panicking in Baltimore, if they're aiming at Washington.
Yeah, well, look, I'd still be relatively shocked, and I'm not an expert on it, but having read everything that's in the news about it, be relatively shocked if they could reach the US with a nuclear device. On the other hand,
I'm not sure yet. They can certainly crash an ICBM. Whether they can carry a nuclear device and whether it would work is a big question. They stop right in the grey area, because I think if they clearly developed, demonstrated they have the capability, if they tested a nuclear weapon and fired it deep into the South Pacific or somewhere like that, then we'd be off to the races. We would have Donald Trump's war would have started 12 months ago.
Right. So, but we certainly know that they could reach Seoul, South Korea, where they could kill millions of people.
Yeah, absolutely, but they don't even need nuclear devices for that. They've got 17 to 18,000 artillery pieces on the border. Seoul is 45 kilometers from the border. They've certainly got the capability to kill hundreds of thousands in Seoul without using nuclear. They have the capability with their intermediate range missiles, which they've had for a decade or more, to hit Japan. And obviously firing at US troops and US bases, both in South Korea and Japan.
You talk about their Scorpion policy. What is that?
Well, I mean, the problem is that this is not mutually assured destruction. They have a small number of, if you want, nuclear weapons. They're incapable of winning a war. But so, if you want, their nuclear posture is sort of preemptive deterrence. At the point at which they think that a nuclear war is going to start, that they will be the first people. They will launch it. And we had reported in Bob Woodward's Fear, it was that Ri So-young, who's the person that I generally meet with in North Korea, said if you evacuated US dependents from South Korea, that would be a signal to North Korea that you're about to start a war. And that's when it would have gone off.
So that might lead to what you call preemptive retaliation.
Yes.
And so, okay, that leads us to the two different problems with North Korea. One is preventing a war that could get literally millions of people killed, innocent civilians, and very, very quickly. And they're on hair trigger because they believe that they will be wiped out. So
they will be. I mean, let's be clear about it. What do you think the American response will be, and what do you think it should be? They're dead.
Yeah, they'll be annihilated, no question about that. But they'll take a lot of people with them, and so that's the issue. The other issue is this,
and also they're taking a lot of innocent civilians with them. Let's be clear. I mean, the whole people of North Korea, I mean, many of those are just as innocent as, if you want, some of those who died in Iraq, Libya, and Syria.
100% right. I mean, if they attack any of our allies with nukes, let alone us, and we nuke them back, who did we get? We got a bunch of innocent civilians. How did that help us?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's always true, and one of the reasons I'm involved in this is that, in a sense, the Iraq War. I supported the intervention in Afghanistan because they were clearly connected with the people who were involved in 9/11. Iraq, it was much less clear.
Well, it was actually perfectly clear they were not. So,
yeah.
All right, but
I was being polite.
Yeah, I know. But the problem is that we don't want to go to war, but in order to not go to war, you have to assure the leaders of North Korea that we are not going to do anything about their government. And the problem is they run concentration camps and they're a dictatorial government, and it's a disaster. So does that mean we are, in essence, giving up on the people of North Korea in order to save the rest of us?
I mean, you've got to do this step by step. If you can start growing the North Korean economy, I mean, North Korea's view is that if the Americans get off their backs, then they can start growing the economy like the Asian tigers. And there's some evidence that might be the case. In 2016, before the last round of sanctions came on, they grew their economy by 5%. So there's some evidence this could be a thriving economy. One of the reasons that Kim Jong-un is gone for a nuclear deterrent, well, two reasons. One of which is he's lost the arms race. He's outspent by South Korea, Japan, and the United States by a factor of 50. So every time there's a clash, conventional clash, they actually lose. But secondly, this is not a developing country. This is a failed industrial state. There is no pool of peasant labor to pull into the factories if you want to deliver that economic growth. So you need to get some of it from a very bloated military that comprise probably 2 or 3 million people, almost exclusively men. That manpower they want to move out of the military into the factories.
Yeah, funny enough, you have actually given me a little bit of hope here in a situation I have not had hope in a long time. I can see that. I can see that as a model. We grow North Korea into a situation where there are a lot more people in power, not just the basically the dictator in charge, and then sanctions would be a bigger lever that we could use with them, and we could ease them into the rest of the global economy. It's a long plan, it's a hard plan, and it does condemn the North Korean people to probably a couple more decades of suffering, but better than the catastrophic war that the neoconservatives would start.
Yeah, I mean the model they're looking for is not American-style capitalism. It's the capitalism of one-party states. Whether it's the old the chaebol in South Korea, the zaibatsu in Japan, the state-controlled enterprises in Vietnam. Interestingly, that's where the summit is, or China. So they're looking for that kind of model. But if one looks at the progress that's been made in China, things are immensely better than they were 20, 25 years ago. And that's the kind of model we can see developing in North Korea. If you start nuking North Korea, it's the people in the camps that die as well as everybody else.
Yep. Indeed. All right, Glyn Ford, the book is Talking to North Korea, Ending the Nuclear Standoff. Thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.